Uh, so now I will be discussing on the rock art of historical period in India. So the main characters of this phase are state society, developed urban centers, well-established agrarian economic base, caste system, trade, codified religion, and use of well-developed script system. These are the main characters of the historical phase in India. However, in this phase, a large section of the society was living in the villages as well as in the forested areas that were a bit less influenced by these developments. So, other than the permanent settled societies and towns uh, of this period, uh, there are people who occupied caves, caverns, rock shelters located in the hilly and forested terrain. Uh, in all such areas, signatures of their presence is reflected actually from the uh, 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 manifestations inside these rock shelter sites. Manifestation of symbols such as the symbols of deities, battle scenes, hunting scenes, inscriptions, uh, so that have been manifested on the many a times inside the caves and also on the large boulders, on the bedrock, cliff sections, etc. So the difference, but they differ from the Chalcolithic theme, and especially the manifestation of hunting scenes and inscriptions. They are the most common hunting scenes on a horseback, especially. They are the most common scenes of this phase. The earlier depictions suggest that uh, they were the manifestations of made by the hermits, saints, sages, as well as a few depictions also points towards the uh, uh, points to be the creation by the uh, marching armies, uh, manifestations made by the uh, hunting groups who took a refuge inside these shelters, uh, and also by the saints who transformed these shelters into dwelling places and for meditation, for worship, uh, etc. Uh, these caves have played a very vital role in what I see when I explored the central Indian rock art, the western Indian rock art zones, that the vital role for the hunting camps, for the royal hunters also, as well as for the medicine man, for the shamans, etc. Uh, some of the famous rock shelter sites of this period are at Sanchi, Narsingar, Kotra Bihar. Most of them they fall on the ancient trade routes and have enough archaeological material inside or in the vicinity of many of the painted shelters. And this suggests that these were occupied by monks. Some of these shelters are famous religious centers, also famous local religious centers, famous for mother goddesses with different names like Bhadkya Mata, Janjali Mata, and so on and so forth. It is noteworthy that many of the manifestations painted inside these rock shelters have, uh, they have ceremonial or ritualistic significance among the contemporary rural and folk culture, tribal or folk culture. And possibly many of these manifestations they continue, especially Ashkdal, Swastika, and all, they continue to be painted on the walls and floor paintings of the uh, areas such as Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat. Uh, so, in a way, these rock shelters bearing the paintings of historical period, they are a huge repository of symbolism of this historical phase and later phases. The art of this period is basically characterized by the presence of Brahmi and Shanti script as well as depictions of gods, goddesses, and uh, also many times geometrical and non-geometrical symbols. Uh, Floral motifs, stupa symbols, Triratna, Alpana design, Ashdal, triangle, dagger, swastika, temple, fire altar. They are some of the common symbols which occur inside the rock shelters of central and western India. Other than these symbols, huge scenes or scenes, large scenes, large canvas, stone canvas depicting soldiers, horse riders, elephant, camel riders engaged in battle, and most of them are well equipped with spears, swords, shields, bow and arrow. So, sorry. So I would say that during historical phase, the subject or the theme they revolve around the battle or the war scenes and religious scenes. Scenes related to economic life in this period are less, and uh, some of them are painted where portrayal of economic activity in form of agricultural activities, cattle herding, hunting, which is rare, is depicted. Themes related to family life and social life are present at a few sites, especially like the site of Satkunda, uh, Karwai, and many of the uh, central Indian sites, scenes related to family life are, of course, depicted, but they are less. Uh, as far as the similarities of the art of this historical period is concerned with the folk and tribal art is concerned, um, I see that yes, similarity is there, especially on the manifestations that occur in the form of wall art of Western India. Uh, they have resemblance with the rock art of historical period of of that region. Images of elephant, horses, human forms found on the coins are good examples uh, where you can see the parallels in the style. You can find parallels with them. Uh, you can trace the parallel with the depictions on coins with the ones which are manifested on the rock shelter sites. So explorations in Chambal Basin, they suggest that during the historical period, uh, most of the shelters are located actually at isolated places nearby some perennial water source, and at times these places they preserve the the ruins of ancient temple structures or some architectural element is there in the vicinity. Uh, and most of these spaces where this historical rock art is found, they are famous for either for Shiva cult or for Mother Goddess temples. In Ladakh and in central India and in parts of South India, some of the rock art sites, they of course fall on uh, the ancient trade routes also, and also they are close by some important religious centers such as Sanchi. The style, as far as the style of manifestations or depictions are concerned, they are a bit, the early historic manifestations are a bit influenced by the Neolithic and Chalcolithic phase. In the later phases, the motifs, they become uh, more static, uh, they become is like geometrical in shape, like triangular bodied human faces, triangular bodied animals. They find their manifestation during the later phase of the historical and the early medieval phase or the medieval period. Contrary to this, the inscriptions, designs, and symbols were elegantly manifested, whereas the hunting and battle scenes themes, they retained naturalism. Uh, During this period, many new concepts, new styles, concepts were introduced to the rock art, uh, like at the site of Ferengi, depictions showing people dressed in craftsman-like clothes, sometimes with loose pantaloons, which can be compared with the Central Asian features that have their parallels in Kushan art. And same as like there are like at Satkunda also similar depictions are represented. Uh, like and The rock paintings of Mahadev Hills, the rock paintings of historical period of Mahadev Hills rather, they are stylistically they are too very much similar to the Kushana paintings. Uh, so and hence the main themes it revolves, I would say that around battle scenes, war scenes, and as I said, around the religious or the religion. So activities related to offense and defense are most extensively portrayed in this phase. Uh, and some of uh, the, the manifestations of royal hunting scene, where elaborate hunting groups with hundreds of hunters engaged in hunt are shown chasing some carnivorous animal or chasing deer, drum beaters or beaters hunting who participate in the hunting. They are also represented very well, and hunters on horseback are also manifested along with the party, hunting party. So also certain depictions where people are engaged in different recreational scenes, such as dancing, playing string instruments, drums, are also is also portrayed at certain sites. Uh, like Regarding gods and goddesses of Brahmanical cult, I would say that at the site of Tipula in Gwalior, uh, the Krishna and Balrama, they are painted uh, very finely, and there is an inscription also in Brahmi, along with the two, along with these two, and they have an attendant who is holding an umbrella-like thing in his hands. So, so the painting of Shravan Kumar also comes in the early medieval phase at various sites in central India. So these are some of the various important features of early historical period, the rock art of early historical period in India. And so the once Actually, it is very difficult to distinguish between the rock art of early historic phase and the rock art of early medieval or medieval phase. But on the basis of uh, inscriptions uh, in Brahmi and Nagri, one can distinguish the different chronological periods of these paintings. So in early medieval period includes elaborate paintings of battle scene, which are very well represented at many and many sites in central India. Uh, and they have in some cases, there are some examples where the religious signs and symbols, they do find their manifestations inside the painted shelters. So once the early medieval period ends, the tradition of rock paintings also it discontinues in a way, and now possibly the paintings on the walls and ceilings of rock shelter only continues is only continued by the hermits and sages who has occupied these shelters as meditation centers, and but uh, those painted motifs are quite scarce actually. So uh, Uh, and now, what we see while exploring these areas in central India, western India, Gujarat, Konkan area, and all these places in Karnataka, what I have seen that these the local beliefs uh, that these rock art landscapes are abode to spirits and gods. It is also noticed that such spaces house a temple, a contemporary small temple, generally related to Mother Goddess, and which is, of course, very frequently and regularly visited by the locals. And a fair is usually organized once in a year in those temples uh, nearby located nearby rock shelters or inside rock shelter. Local tribal still paint certain symbols, such as a trident symbol or a symbol of a cross inside these shelters, and especially on some festive occasions. One may also find various shelters turned into temples, into tombs of Muslim saints, especially in Narsingar area, in Kotra Vihar area of Rajgarh district. Uh, now, the modification is such that the shelter is totally converted into concrete structure actually. Uh, Structure, and this actually tradition also persisted during the early historical period also, where hundreds of shelters in central India, especially the shelters which are in the vicinity of many of the large temples or on ancient trade routes, they have been completely modified into dwelling places using door jambs also, using windows, uh, door jambs, and paved platforms. So, especially the sages, they have occupied these shelters, and so this tradition is still continues, but it continues in a different form actually. Uh, as you all know that these sites have attracted humans or man from time immemorial, and have served as the places not only sufficing the economic need, but also very important places that have fulfilled the psychological, religious needs of the local people. Today, I would say that these rock art sites, uh, they are only visited at some festive occasions to perform the worships, uh, worship and for religious purposes. So uh, the the local folk, they still regard these shelters as sacred places, and they congregate at one particular time of year, and they have a feast there, and they usually perform their uh, religious activities, and they spend a night and they have a meeting, and even they decide the date and the magnitude of the next festival, how they are going to perform, who will be the taking care of the arrangements, etc. Unfortunately, the conservation status of most of the rock shelter sites in India is actually not satisfactory, and due to partly due to natural destruction and human vandalism, uh, they are destroying at an alarming rate. Natural forces such as weathering, exfoliation, patination, water seepage, deforestation of the nearby area, uh, blasting by the stone mafias, extensive quarrying of sandstone from and granite, intensive firing activity inside these shelters by the local people or by the shepherds. So they are all destroying most of the sites, and this should be in a way stopped. And even like the local people, the scholars, the academics, they should take interest in protecting these sites. So since like all these sites are preserved in nature's museum and need a very due care and protection, uh, so that the coming generation can also have a feel of the riches of our ancestral past. Uh, we should also understand that the rock art is just not an art, but it's a tradition which was followed uh, and persisted among the bygone or pre-literate or pre-modern societies thousands and thousands years ago. It cannot be merely seen in terms of aesthetics, nor as a simple exhibition of artwork uh, of prehistoric times. But we should also look it as a repository enumerating the cognitive abilities of so-called primordial societies, as well as it is a cultural scale to judge the social evolution. So it is therefore very important to develop a perfect management system at village level, at panchayat level, as well as at district level and at the state level, uh, and take necessary steps for its conservation and protection, since it is the only key to understand. It is the only window to understand the least understood prehistoric cultures. Uh, so, in the colorful light of rock art, we can decode so many facets of the ancient forebears of India. So additionally, I would say that an urgent documentation and scientific study at the same time is also required, which is really very important. Then that is in our hands, in the hands of archaeologists, in the hands of the agencies, the central agencies like ASI and all, to take steps and document as much as possible, because before it is too late to realize that and regret that uh, we have lost uh, this cultural heritage, global cultural heritage, which is really very invaluable, uh, very valuable, and like the pictorial images, they inform a lot about human culture, society, and many more, so many things. So to conclude the entire this rock art session, uh, I will refresh a few points like India is immensely rich in rock art heritage, and it is the best pictorial source of information which gives the evidence of understanding the past, human models of reality, as well as the origins of human uh, mind and many constructs of the reality it has created. Uh, it gives scores of information at the same time about the society, the economic life, the political life, the religious progress uh, of ancient period. Furthermore, rock art is very important means of tracing the development of human cognition, aesthetic abilities, craftsmanship since the dawn of civilization. Uh, Rock art not only imparts information about the technical and thematic aspects of animal motifs, human motifs, floral forms, landscape, etc. But it is also very much capable of imparting some knowledge about the belief system, the culture, the polity, the symbology, the faiths of the past societies. So and in addition to this, I think this is a very, very remarkable source of unbroken artistic tradition of thousands of years that reflects the ancient experiences and complex knowledge system that man has acquired, since thousands of years. It also informs about the continuation of certain symbols, certain motifs, certain designs that got assimilated in contemporary modern rural folk and tribal cultures. Uh, Due to population growth, rapid development, as I have already mentioned, like most of the sites are facing conservation threats. Uh, Hence, it is better to devise conservation strategies, site management plans, which is really very necessary, and more analytical and scientific studies are also should be conducted in order to in order to document as much as we can, so that at least we can give something to our to the future generations.